and welcome to episode 15 of the Mad Madam Mel podcast. I'm Mel and I am a botanical yarn dyer living on the Orkney Islands off the north coast of Scotland. So if you're a regular viewer, welcome back, and if you're new here, then hi. And if you see a cat wandering around behind me, which you won't at the moment because she's asleep, that is my cat Holly. I live here with my husband and our two cats Holly and Willow, and a menagerie of chickens and ducks on a small building. So I'm gonna try and crack on quite quickly with this first finished object because I am very warm. I am wearing my first finished object for this episode, and it is a 100% alpaca cardigan, hence why I'm really rather warm. So I will stand up and show this a bit better in a moment, but this is the Ichabod Cardigan by Andy Sutherland, and it's supposed to be reminiscent of a pumpkin, hence the Ichabod name for the cardigan. If you know the film Sleepy Hollow or the stories and such like, you'll get the reference. So I've knit this slightly different to the pattern, and I'll explain what changes I've made. I haven't made that many this time, but first of all I will show off what it looks like. So if I stand up and move this chair out of the way, and hopefully you'll be able to see this a bit better. It is quite a shaped cardigan. As you can see, it's got quite a bit of waist shaping here, which makes a really nice shape to the back, and it has these lines in the design. I don't know if you can see that, just there and here, and it has them on the back, in the middle and down the sides, and also down the outside and the underside of the sleeves. And it's supposed to be reminiscent of the veins of a pumpkin, as you can see, and it has these really nice design on the pockets. And these were a really clever construction, which I'll explain about in a moment. I did mention this in the last podcast, but I will mention it again. And I would call it what I would call a Granddad style cardigan. So if I quickly button this up, or button it up part way anyway, you can see it's got this V-neck section here before it meets in the centre. Again, it pulls in really nicely on the waist. I've adjusted the sleeves on this a little. I should have decreased these more rapidly, but as you can see, I mean, they are looser than the pattern it showed on the pattern, but I really rather like it. And then I decreased very rapidly on, if this is going to focus, decreased really rapidly on the last row before the cuff. And I have made these full length sleeves this time, which normally I don't. I prefer a 3/4 sleeve generally, but I thought this would look better as a full sleeve, which is as the pattern originally shows. I will sit back down. Okay, other changes I've made. I made a narrower button band for this, and I'm kind of not regretting it, because the buttons I've used are quite small buttons, as you can see. I don't know if these will focus when my face is in shot. As you can see, they are really small buttons, and I didn't want them to be lost in amongst the button band. So I've made the button band narrower than the pattern dictated. Other changes that I made, or the major one that I changed, was that I actually stick to this cardigan. So I'm going to take this off and I will be able to show you that a bit better, because I am melting. So this cardigan is knit flat, and I didn't want to knit it flat because that's a lot of purling. Instead, I knit it in the round. So when you construct this cardigan, it's knit bottom up, and you knit the bottom band. I keep calling that the button band, it's not. The bottom band first. Then you knit the back of the pockets. So and then they're kind of flapping on stitch holders. And then you start knitting the body up, and as you do, you knit the front of the pockets and pick up the stitches on the back, on the sides of the back of the pocket. So by the time you get to the top, you have a whole pouch knitted. Well, like I said, this is supposed to be knit flat. So once I got past the waistband, the bottom band, what I did was I started knitting it in the round, and I knit extra stitches for the steek, which I haven't covered yet. I knit the steek all the way up, and I didn't stop when I got to the top of where the buttons go. I carried on all the way up to where the shoulders are, and then steeked it and carried on knitting as the pattern dictated from then onwards. So this made it a lot easier for me personally, and a hell of a lot quicker. So after that, or before I cut it, I sewed up either side of the steek on this sewing machine, which you won't be able to, I don't think you'll be able to see it very well. No, it's not going to show, but I've sewn up either side on the sewing machine, then cut up the steek and did the button band. I did a video on, I don't know if it was in May or June, when I was vlogging on steeking, when I cut through my caramel gnarled oak cardigan, so that's got a bit more information on it. I still have the ribbon to stitch down on this, and I think I have it to hand, so bear with me. Yep, I bought this ribbon on Etsy. Is it going to focus with my facing shot? Yep, I bought this ribbon on Etsy. To go on the inside of the steek. I just thought it would look really nice. The orange is almost identical, and then it's got this kind of like a calico beige on the background. So I've yet to do that. That will take me ages to get around to, probably, because I haven't completely finished the one on my caramel cardigan yet. I started it the other day, but I haven't finished. So what other changes did I make? Well, there was now a button band, there was the steek, the sleeves, which are obviously looser than the pattern dictated. But other than that, I think I pretty much stayed true to the pattern. I did less buttons, and I knit one row buttonholes on the button band. I think the pattern was yarn over buttonholes, but instead I went with the one row buttonhole knitting method. But yes, this is knit on, I think, 4.5mm needles, and I knit the sleeves on 4.5 short tips on a 40cm cable. That's 40cm including the tips, so I don't know, I think with short tips on, I'm not sure if it's actually 40cm, but it's like so big. But yeah, I knit those in the round as well, rather than magic loop. I found when knitting magic loop on sleeves that you end up knitting, or I end up knitting at a tighter gauge, which is a bit of a problem. So I would probably recommend going up half a millimeter on needle size if you had to use a magic loop for knitting sleeves. Well, maybe you're not as tight a knitter as I'm just tighter knitting flat, which is what magic loop is in effect, than I am knitting in the round, so that's probably why. This is knit with Drops Alpaca in Rust mix, I believe. This is from my drop stash. I think I've mentioned about my drop stash before. I have quite a sizable stash of drops from a few years back when I really got into knitting, and I had basically no stash other than a few random oddballs from the charity shop, and I stocked up on quite a bit of yarn for various projects, which I haven't knit yet, but I will knit them. Hence why I'm trying to get through it as quickly as I can, because it's better to be in my drawer and being worn than it is in a drawer and not just being in a ball of yarn. So this is Drops Alpaca. It's a fingering weight yarn, and the pattern calls for a worsted, I believe. So holding this double, it's more of a sport weight than a fingering weight, and holding it double meant that it came out at more an iron weight. And my gauge, I had less stitches per 4 inches than I would have according to the pattern, so I've had to adjust for that and knit a smaller size with less stitches to get a bigger cardigan in the size that I actually wanted. I had to calculate all my gauge and everything out, but it's worked out really nicely. I love the fit. I was a little concerned when I finished it that I'd knit it a little bit short, but it is 100% alpaca and it drapes and stretches a wee bit, and I was really pleased for that because it kind of bounced up when it was complete, and I was a bit concerned it was a bit too short, or shorter than I wanted it. It wasn't too short, but it was shorter than I would have preferred. So yeah, really pleased with that. Just in time for autumn and Halloween season coming up soon, and all orange and purples and blacks and yummy Halloween stuff. So yep, that is my first finished object for this episode. You'll have to excuse me if I keep fiddling with my fringe today. It needs a trim. It's way too long and it keeps getting in my eyes. Anyway, second finished object is a colourwork hat, and I've had to leave recording this episode until today because this is a gift for my mum and she's coming over to visit tomorrow, so I have to record it today so I can edit this in the morning before she arrives. So it is all about perfect timing. So this is a colourwork hat, and I have used the Flora Mittens pattern by Ellie of Skein for the colourwork chart, and I have the pattern here. You can see the Flora Mittens. I've knit these mittens 3 times, I believe. I did a pair for myself, a pair for my mum, and a pair for my nana, and yeah, so these are done in DK weight, and this hat is kind of done in DK weight. The purple, these were from my really old stash. This is like pre-drop stash. This is from several years ago. Some of it anyway is from a ball that I acquired somewhere, which is this purple random DK weight. I believe it's acrylic yarn or acrylic blend yarn, and the background colour I've used this yarn, which is a mohair blend. I believe it's mohair wool acrylic blend, and it's not going to focus because it wants to focus on the hat, but it's fluffy, and this is only a fingering weight, but because it's so fluffy it works perfectly fine with the DK weight yarn here, and they are done on a needle consistent with a DK weight yarn. I believe it is knit on I think it's on a 2.75 millimeters, but I couldn't be 100% certain. I will put all the links to my projects and such like below, all the Ravelry links if you can access Ravelry, and any of the patterns that I can find that are not on Ravelry I will also post the links down below as well. So it's just a simple 2x2 rib on the bottom, and then I've knit about ½ an inch or so in plain stockinette before starting the colourwork chart, and I used the colourwork chart from the mitten and just repeated it 6 times. Well, it is 6 repeats of all the way around till I got to the top, and then I've decreased, I think I've knit about ½ an inch above the colourwork chart before starting the decreases, and I've decreased every other round 1 stitch per colourwork repeat until I got to a little round circle at the top, and then kind of cinched it in at the top. Really simple, really warm, very lightweight because of the mohair, and really pleased with that. So that is finished object number 2 this time. Okay, on to finished object number 3, last one. I seem to get either a lot of finished objects done or no finished objects at all. So this one was quite well, it's been on the needles for a time, but it is a pair of DK weight socks, and it's going to look like it's got no foot on it because these are constructed flat. And I've mentioned about this before. This was a 1/3 half skein, 50-gram skein of yarn that I bought from Felt Fusion, and I have the label here, and it's where is it gonna focus? By Felt Fusion, and it is the Magma colourway. and I didn't think when I bought this, I just was obviously having a not with it moment, and it is 100% merino, which is not much good for socks, but was bought for socks. So what I've done is, as on the previous 2 pairs that I made with different colourways, is I've used a different yarn on the toes, heels and the base of the sock. You see it's the same on both sides, with nylon in it. So on the previous 2 pairs of socks I used some of my own yarn in an undyed base in a BFL nylon. This one is a commercial sock yarn from my stash, and it is, I've lost the label, where's it gone? Okay, and it is a very old ball of yarn, this one. Well, I say very old, it's an old-ish ball of yarn. It is Sudor, I never know how to pronounce that, Sudor Talisman, 4-ply wool and nylon, and it is in ounces rather and grams, but it is in ounces. It is a 1 ounce ball, 28.35 grams, which you don't buy in the UK. You can buy them in grams, in ounces you just don't, or not anymore. So I'm assuming this has got to be from, oh, I don't know, 80s maybe. And this colourway is it's number 71, which, you know, doesn't really have a colour. But what it is a very, very dark navy blue with brighter, not super bright, but a little bit lighter blue, like a royal blue flecks in it. So I've done just a plain Turkish cast on, Tunisian, Turkish cast on, and on the bottom it's just plain, and it's a gusset, it's toe up, and I've done a eye of partridge on the heel turn, and then halfway up switch just a straight stockinette, because these are DK weight. Well, the base yarn is fingering weight, but I haven't changed the gauge, the needles for the DK weight. I'm just going to hope that it doesn't wear through. The reason I didn't carry on the eye of partridge the back of the heel is because these are DK weight. There's not a lot of chance of me actually wearing these in a pair of shoes. They're going to be worn around the house, which I spend the majority of my time anyway. So they're going to get more wear here on the base of the foot anyway. But I've put extra reinforcement just on the heel to be on the safe side. Though to be honest, I tend to wear out here on the ball of my foot more than anywhere else. I've knit these flat, which means there is a, I don't know which, I've had to mattress stitch up the inside. So I've done the toe in the round. I could probably show this on the other sock a bit better. So I knit the toe in the round, and then I started knitting one side in the yarn, twisted the yarns, knit along the other side, and then knit back and twist the yarns and knit back, and did that all the way up to the heel, knit the heel, picked up the stitches on the gusset and all the way up to here, and once I got to this point, started knitting the main colour yarn in the round, and I got up to just past the beginning of the rib on sock number 1, and then I did exactly the same thing for sock number 2, got up to the same point, then unravelled what I had left of the ball of yarn, cut it in half in the middle. I left it attached when I finished sock number 1. I just popped it in the bottom of my project bag, cut the yarn in half exactly and wound them up, and then knit until I'd run out for both socks. I'm going to move on to works in progress now before this battery dies. So I showed you this on the last episode. It is the Boyagi shawl, which is this pattern here by Knit Boop, which has portions of different patterns using 2 different coloured yarns. So I'm going to hopefully not drop this off the needles. Last time we spoke, I believe I had just started the lace segment, and I am 2/3 of the way through now, I believe. Let's pop that down there. It begins with colour number 1 and this garter section, and then you introduce colour number 2, this mosaic section, and then colour number 2 on its own for the lace section. And I'm really happy with how it's coming out. It's really pretty. It's showing up this pattern really nicely. The yarns I've used are both from Olan yarns, and the colour number 1 is this lovely semi-solid green called Portrait, and colour number 2 is this kind of a coppery colour with green in it, kind of like weathering copper really, and it is called Kiln. They're both fingering weight and they're both 100% merino singles. And yeah, hopefully, see, when I'm knitting in front of the TV, which is when I do most of my knitting, I like to spend kind of the first part of the evening doing something a little more complicated. So a chart or something like that. And that's when I've been doing this, although I haven't worked on this for a few days because I've been working on something else. And then once I start getting a bit tired, I'll switch to something a little simpler. So this has been kind of like beginning of the evening up until recently. So once I get past this section, you do another segment of the 2-colour mosaic, and then it goes into another section of garter in colour number 1. But I don't think it uses a full 200 grams of yarn, this pattern. So once I get most of this knit, will introduce colour 2 again, and I will use it up in another garter panel. I'll probably do a few stripes during the changeover point and then knit colour number 2 to use it up, rather than having a random piece left over. So it feels lovely, it's squishy. I'm knitting this on I have no idea, because it's these Knit Pro needles, the sizes wear off them straight away. I much prefer the Look Your needles with the numbers embossed in the, what do you call that, the metal bit of the needle. But according to the pattern, it is 3.75mm needles, and I believe, no, 3.75 for the lace and 4mm needles for the rest of the pattern. And yeah, so hopefully next time I record I will be past the lace and well on my way on mosaic section number 2. It is an asymmetrical triangular shawl, so that's kind of the top edge there, and it gets bigger and bigger and bigger the more you knit. So really nice, a nice fairly neutral, well yeah, I suppose it is quite a neutral shawl. It'll go with quite a lot. It'll go with autumnal stuff, it'll go with summery stuff, and it'll go with wintry stuff I think too. I think it'll be a really good go-to shawl. Okay, next work in progress, and the reason why the shawl has been on hold a bit is I started another top. I want to get quite a few tops knit, so this one I'm trying not drop it off the needles, this one, because I'm getting quite tangled. It is a cotton yarn top, and it is the, I will get the pattern. It is the Solvik Shirt by Ellie of Skein-Dae. Anyone think I just really liked Ellie of Skein-Dae's patterns and Andy Satterlund patterns, but I really do. It is the Solvik Shirt, and this is in black and white, you can see, because most of the time I print out my patterns in black and white to save ink, because usually, you know, I'm not going to be staring at the photo the whole time. So it's knit flat but round all at the same time, which sounds really strange. And it is, this one I believe is done in a linen mix yarn, and I have done it in a cotton mix yarn from my stash, and I've done it in red. It looks quite an orangey red on screen, but it's a much more Christmas red, I would say. I don't think it's going to show up its true red. Let's see if true red, no. It's definitely more of a Christmas red rather than an orange red. It's very orange on there. It's more of a scarlet. So for this, you start at the top edge. This is the neck edge, just here, and you knit the front section down to the bottom of the armholes. Then you leave those stitches on a cable or scrap yarn, and you pick up the stitches and knit the back down to the same point. Kind of standard for a, you know, a top-down top. But once you get to the underarms, you start to join and knit in the round, but you technically knit it flat. So you use 2 balls of yarn. Say there was 2 balls of yarn here. You would knit all the way around the front and then to the back, cross the yarns over, and then knit all the way to the back, down to the front. And in doing so, it means you don't have to purl at all, because this is done in garter stitch. And if you were knitting garter stitch in the round, obviously you would have to purl every other row, and it's not knit flat, otherwise you'd have to seam it. So you don't have to seam it, and you don't have to purl at all. So this lace panel in the front, that just goes down sort of like here, down the front of the shirt, and the rest is just plain, and it's working up relatively quickly, not as quickly as I thought it would. And this is knit on 6mm needles. I think the pattern says 5.5mm, and I'm knitting this on a 6mm. The yarn is very, very, very splitty. I salvaged this yarn oh god, it must be 10 years ago or something. I had a big cotton, obviously cotton blend red poncho, and I don't really wear poncho. I have one poncho that I throw on if I'm really cold, that I can throw over the top of everything else. It's a mohair blend one, and I have one because you can't do anything in a poncho other than sit. So I salvaged all the yarn, I pulled it out, I frogged the whole thing. I hadn't made it. This was you know, just a shop bought poncho, and I ripped out all of the yarn and balled it all up, and knew I would use it for something. Because it was cotton blend, I could use it for something, if nothing else, for making dishcloths. But turned out this pattern was perfect for it. But the ply splits like anything. It's just, I mean, it's not going to show up there. It's okay here where it's balled up, but that one isn't so bad. This one, the strands are just, they're everywhere. They're just a pain in the butt. So it's taking a bit longer than I was hoping. I would say it's kind of a DK weight. Yeah, DK weight. And like I said, it's 6mm. And of course, it's nearly the end of August, or middle of August now, and Orkney summer is almost been and gone. And I'm knitting a summer top. That doesn't matter. It'll be okay over a long sleeve t-shirt, and I could wear it with sweatpants around the house if nothing else, or over a pair of jeans if I'm going out the house. But red is my colour normally, but orange red is definitely not my colour. But cold red is, which is what it is in real life. So that's why I've not been knitting on the Biagi shawl, but also I started another shawl. I started a shawl which I swatched for ages ago, and I'm going to struggle to show this because there's only a couple of wee little pictures of it, and trying to avoid showing the pattern on screen as well because it is a paid for pattern. But it is the Widdershins shawl, and it is a triangle shawl with, let's struggle to show, but it has lace in, it has a garter section and a lace section and a colourwork section, which you can just see there. If I open this up a bit more, I can show you a bit better the colourwork section. I might be able to, yeah, it's not showing anything there. It has suns and moons and stars on a band of at the bottom of the shawl. I'm going to change it up slightly in that I'm just going to do stars and moon phases. So instead of just having crescent moons and stars, I'll have like crescent moons and full moons and crescent moons and stars possibly interspersed. So I'll just take out the suns and put other moons in basically. And it is a DK weight pattern, and the original pattern was done in a kind of a navy semi-solid, and then these golden semi-solid for the colour work. I'm going to be doing in a midnight purple background of my own hand dyed yarn and a silvery grey for the colour work, and I will show you the yarns I'm going to use. So I'm using, I'll get rid of the fluff, this yarn, which is a DK weight in my Spellbound colourway, which is a dark purple semi-solid. And the colourwork section, I'm using Hulst yarn, and it is it's the Tides base, which is a 70% wool, 30% silk in the colourway Seagull. And I will be doubling up, holding 2 strands double from inside and outside to knit, because it blooms up quite nicely to a DK weight. And it's kind of got little tweedy neps, but they don't really show very well, and they won't show up too much in the colour work, which is great. So that means I get to use the silvery grey up nicely as well. And I haven't done much so far. I'm knitting this on 5mm, I believe. Yep, 5mm needles, and so far I've only done part of the garter section, as you can see. And it is a triangle shawl. It has a garter tab at the top, and oh, where's the top? Yeah, that's the top edge. And I need to switch this to longer cable because I'm at as much as I can fit on here now, really. I'm using Deathly Hallows book, Progress Keeper, that I got in a Christmas yarn advent calendar about 2 or 3 years ago. And my stitch markers, which you might not be able to see very well, are gold and pink because they're part of a Battenberg set from Fripperies and Bibelots, which I always struggle to say. Oh, 5mm are still on the needles. So I'm alternating skeins for the garter section. Once I get to the lace section, I'll not bother to do that. And the bottom bit lace, the bottom garter section, I will alternate whatever yarn I have left over again, because that's really where it's going to show up any colour pooling. And I haven't done much so far, and I'm doing an extra skein of yarn. I'm using 300 grams worth, making a big wraparound shawl, big squishy, cuddly, snuggly one. So that's whip number 3, I believe. Okay, I just completely lost my train of thought. My husband just came in from work and kind of wandered in and completely anyway, I've had a chat with him, and now I can't remember whether I finished talking about the last project, but I think I had. So we're on to the final one. And I haven't done a lot on this one. It is another sock. This one is for myself again, like the Magma ones, but this is a fingering weight sock. So there's very little to show. All I've done so far is a toe and a little tiny bit of the body of the sock. This is the Scatterby socks, and I will have to show you a picture on my phone because I haven't printed this one out. I just wrote down the stitch pattern on a little piece of paper, but it looks like this. It was really popular a couple of years back, the Scatterby socks, and I meant to knit them and I haven't until now. So it's got kind of a slip stitch sort of a design in it, and I'm using a mixture of hand dyed yarn, indie dyed yarn and commercial yarn. The indie dyed yarn is this one, which is really blue. It's gotten quite bright now, the sun's come out. I'm not sure if you can see that very well. Okay, that's better. That's kind of what, that's pretty much as it looks. It's got these little speckles of oranges and reds and golds and little bits of blue in there as well. And I'm tying, that is, let me find the label. again by Felt Fusion, which you can see there, and it is in the Molly colourway, and this one is a merino nylon base, and it is a 50-gram skein, which is why I ended up with the 50-gram skeins of the 100% merino before, because I saw this, got this, and didn't even think about what the base was for the other ones. So I'm pairing it with some of this blue, which is very similar to the little blue flecks in the yarn there, and this is a commercial yarn. It is Drops Fable. I think this is the one for this, and if it is, it's number 103, but it's kind of a mid blue. And because I'm knitting a merino nylon base, which doesn't, I find it wears out really quickly. I've spoke about this before. Merino nylon for socks for me is not a good idea, and I don't plan on buying merino nylon for socks again anytime in the future. I much prefer a BFL nylon. It's just, I'm too heavy on my feet for merino. So on the bottom I'm doing a slip stitch for the 2 inches of the ball of the foot, and then I will switch to knitting just stockinette till I get to the heel. So I'm knitting on 9-inch or 10-inch, I think it is, circulars, which I really took a shine to doing. I knit the toe Turkish cast on again, and it is done magic loop until a couple of rows of the main body of the yarn, the main body yarn, and then switched to the short circulars. And I'll switch back to magic loop when I get to the heel. It just gives you a bit more loop to play with. It's a bit fiddly to be able to do it. I've heard you can do the heel flap on these little circulars, but I wonder whether that would be a top down sock rather than a toe up, but that's what I'm doing. The stitch marker is another, it's a bottle of Felicius, I never remember if it's Felicius, Liquid Look, and it was a part of the same advent swap I think I got the other Harry Potter one with. I actually have 2 on here because I have a candy cane stitch marker on there as well. I like to have a stitch marker on the first side of the sock so I know which is the kind of like side 1, side 2, which is kind of from knitting it magic loop. And I've actually put this one on at the beginning of the round as well, so I know when to stop when I come to do the heel. I've also got stitch markers, again, Fripperies and Bibelots. These are the candy cane ones to show where the pattern repeat is on the top of the sock, so I don't do it on the bottom of the sock. So that is it for projects this episode. Like I said, my husband just came back from work. It is his first day back after being on furlough for 4 months, is it? Yeah, it's nearly 5 months. April, May, June, July. Nearly 5 months. That is a long time. Not used to having no time on my own in the house. It's been nice this morning. I've been really busy. He works a split shift, so this morning's shift the house was really quiet, and it's not as if it's not quiet when he's here, because our house is quite sprawly. So even in this end of the house this morning it was quiet, even though he usually has his coffee like in the kitchen, which is the complete other end of the house. But it just felt different. Can't really explain it. Completely different when there's somebody in the house and you can't hear them. It's completely different to when there's nobody in the house and you can't hear anybody. Very strange. So that was quite nice. But this afternoon, his afternoon shift, I've been recording podcasts, which takes time. It takes a lot of time actually to set up a podcast. I've got to set up my lights because I live in a dark house, as you can see, and deep set windows. So I've got to set up lights, set up cameras, and make sure I look relatively presentable. I'm not a big makeup person, but I do put at least a little bit on for the camera sometimes. Depends what mood I'm in. and getting all my projects together and the patterns and making sure, and half the time I forget, like forgetting to tell you that I knit my socks on 2.25mm needles almost exclusively, but I forgot to mention that because I'm just that professional. So it's been busy this afternoon, and I've been doing Vlogust this month, not every day. I do like doing vlogs, and I usually vlog more in October during Vlogtober and during December for Vlogmas, but I do like to do a bit of vlogging elsewhere. So August I've been doing Vlogust, but only a handful of days. I'm not pushing myself on this. I'm trying to do something interesting every day just for the camera. It just won't get done. So on days when I have been doing something that I thought might be camera worthy, I've actually recorded. So I've done a bit of recording yesterday, and I've edited that vlog today, but we've had no internet all day. I mean, it's after 5 o'clock in the evening now, and our internet came on probably an hour ago. We had a lot of thunder and lightning overnight, although I slept through it, and my husband. I don't think it was too bad where we are, but most of the island had storms. But it seems like a section of the island where we are has been without the internet. Not the whole island, but just like a line down one side of the island has been without internet, and it finally came on about an hour ago. So hopefully I can get that vlog. I don't know if I'll have time to get it uploaded this evening. It might have to be uploaded overnight. Our internet for uploading is quite slow as well, so say a 10-minute vlog video will take 2 hours to upload. A podcast like this I will have to set away overnight. So tomorrow I will edit the podcast, and tomorrow night, overnight, I will set it away to upload. So that's kind of, it's rural life, slow internet, and the UK is not brilliant for internet speeds, certainly not north of the Watford Gap anyway. So yeah, in fact the fastest internet speed I've ever experienced was probably when I was in Swansea, which is in Wales. So they've got good internet, but everywhere else is pretty slow. What else have we got up to? I've got plans for the next couple of weeks. Knitting wise, I have these projects I'm working on. Obviously I still want to knit the Witching Hour swan shawl, although I will be knitting it as a sweater. I have the yarn, I have it swatched, I have the pattern, everything's ready to go. I just want to finish the Solvik shirt first. And yeah, I'm kind of gearing up for all those autumn Halloween projects, because I really do love autumn and Halloween. But Mum's coming over to visit, and tomorrow, actually, I'm picking her up from the ferry tomorrow, and she's over for a few days, and it's her birthday while she's here, so I have a very fancy cake to make for her at the weekend, and maybe a little bit of party food. I'm not sure if my sister, who lives on the island too, will be coming over. We've kind of got to work it around social distancing, and I've kind of lost track of what the guidelines are right now, because we're quite isolated where we are, so we don't see many people anywhere on a regular year. So I think I'm going to leave it there. I have already got the tea cooking and I don't want to burn it. So hopefully that's everything, and this isn't going to overrun too long. So hopefully I will see you again in a couple of weeks' time. Hopefully no longer than that, otherwise the projects start to build up. And I want to keep these a little bit shorter, and it never seems to work out that way. So until next time, I hope you have a good rest of month, and we'll speak to you again soon. Bye.